Hello, I'm David Miller. We finally received the judgment in my Employment Appeal Tribunal case after Bristol University tried to overturn my landmark legal victory in February 2024. The Employment Tribunal had found that my anti-Zionist beliefs were worthy of respect in a democratic society and were protected by equality law. I'm overwhelmed and delighted to say that Bristol University's attempt to overturn that judgment has failed. And we've won yet again, solidifying the legal precedent my case set over 2 years ago. I want to thank everyone who has supported me throughout this process and who has generously donated to my case. I also want to thank my legal team, Zula Rahman, Zach Samur, and Gianna Siglias for their tireless work. And I additionally want to thank the Employment Appeal Tribunal panel led by Lord Fairley. The campaign against me at Bristol began in spring 2019 and reached fever pitch in 2021 when I was eventually unlawfully sacked. Since then, I've faced years of legal procedures to vindicate my position and, with your help, I've won.
Joining me on the Crispin Flintoff show is David Miller. Congratulations, David Miller. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Crispin. Thank you for having me on again. And I'm very pleased that we've won the case for myself, obviously, but also for everybody else that it will help in the future, that in the future no one will be able to be sacked for being an anti-Zionist. It will be illegal to do so. And this, I believe, is the beginning of the end of the ability of the Zionists to use anti-Semitism as a weapon to smash support for the Palestinians.
Now, you've won victories for quite a while, but they tend to keep being appealed. And is that the case? They can do it again? Can they appeal again? Where do they appeal to?
So technically, yes, there is the option to appeal. Normally, it would go to the Court of Appeal, but in this case, it's likely. In fact, the Council for Bristol already expressed this intent at the hearing last November. It's likely they will try and leapfrog, as they called it, to the Supreme Court. And the reason for that is that one of the things which they will seek to contest if they decide to take an appeal, and I hope that they don't. I can't see that it's going to do them much good, but let's see. One of the things they would contest is that is the Higgs judgment, and that was the judgment in the case of Kirsty Higgs, who was the Christian teacher at the Farmer School who was sacked for having views on LGBT teaching, what she regarded as propaganda in schools. And she won her case. And the specific bit which relates to my case is that there's the question of underlying beliefs, so anti-Zionist beliefs which are protected, and the manner of their expression. So the question is the relationship between the underlying beliefs and the manner of the expression. In her case, it was held that her manner of expression on her Facebook page was an expression of her underlying beliefs, and it's the same with my case. So if they were to challenge that and overturn that, then that would have some implications. But who knows if they're going to do that? They've got, I believe, either 7 or 21 days, depending on which route they take, and we'll see if that happens. We should hear, if it's 7 days, we should hear it in the next, well, when this goes out, 2 days. But let's see what happens. I think that there may not be an appetite at the university to take it any further. I do hope that they'll leave it there because we've won so convincingly twice now, and we've now established this as a matter of precedent in British law that it's illegal to sack someone for being anti-Zionist, which is a tremendous advance.
Okay, so on that road from 2019 when this all started, have you at any point thought, oh, I can't do this anymore. It's too much for me. I mean, I know that they must have offered you compensation of some sort, try and pay you off to stop you challenging that your dismissal. Have you ever thought, I'll just give it up?
Not for a second, comrade. Not for a second. No, I mean we did try and reach a settlement with them so that they could pay me some money as compensation, and they said that it would be on a business case, which basically meant that they weren't going to give me anything. But the thing which really sealed it for me was that they wanted a non-disclosure agreement, and as you can probably tell if you know anything about me at all, that was never going to happen. So no, of course not. This is The people don't understand this. They think maybe that I'm kind of awkward or something. But look, I'm a sociologist. I do research. I find things out about the world. I try and work out how the world operates, and I find things out about the world which are true. And when I find them, I cannot say to the world, "Oh well, I didn't really find that," or "That wasn't really true." I have to tell the truth. And so there was no option for me. I was challenged for saying things about Zionism, about Zionist groups, about Zionist student groups, which were true. And there was no way that I was going to say, "Oh well, I didn't really mean it," or "It's not really true that the Union of Jewish Students is a Zionist organization," when it is transparently the case that it is.
Yeah, I mean, the number of people who have attacked you, not just from the Zionist position, but anti-Zionists have attacked you as well, as I've noticed on the show sometimes. Um, how difficult has that been for you when people that seemingly on the same side as you attack you?
Well, I mean, this process has been one long series of moments of clarity. So when I started off this, I was much more naive about these things than I am now. And when you see what happens, when you see what people in a tight spot or in a tight political argument, what particular people do, then you realize you say, "Oh, I thought that we'd agreed about those things," and it turns out that we don't agree. And then you've got to then the sociologist in me then says, "Well, how do I explain the fact that there are these people who say that they're anti-Zionists?" and yet they are attacking me in the same way as the Zionists would be attacking me. So my response to this is not to hit back, at least directly or immediately, but to try and work it out, not just by thinking about it, but by doing research. So that's what I've been trying to do. And people who've been following my work will see that I've been writing about the way in which Zionism has infiltrated elements of the anti-racist movement, the Stop the War movement, going back many decades, and why it is that the left much of the left is weak on Zionism. And so what I've tried to do is to turn the attacks on me into a method for learning why it is that these attacks are occurring. Because either it's that or some kind of chemical process in my brain has just switched on and I've suddenly decided to hate the Jews, which is kind of what it looks like they think. They think that somehow I've been a convinced anti-racist all my adult life. One of my first political demonstrations was an anti-Nazi League demonstration, and how would it happen that I would suddenly a switch would flip and I would suddenly say, "Oh, I used to be against racism, but now I hate the Jews." I mean, it's just completely absurd. So either I believe that, or I try and find out what is a more sociological explanation for why it is that I would be attacked by people who think of themselves as anti-Zionists, and in some respects, some of them are anti-Zionist. But you've got to understand what it is. What are the material and social processes which lead to that weakness on Zionism, which means that some anti-Zionists end up doing the same witch hunting the movement as do the Zionists, and effectively become, objectively allies of the Zionists, which is deeply, saddening, really.
Hmm. Now, the thing about you that strikes me is you're very intellectual and think of everything in those terms and not in emotional terms. You don't go into emotional kind of arguments. It is the same as Dr. Rame. Her response to things is very much like a scientist or a surgeon ripping out bits of the body and saying that goes there, this goes there, and that's over there. You don't seem to get emotionally involved in this stuff. That's a lot of people. I mean, I'm thinking about, say, for example, Jeremy Corbyn, when he's accused of being anti-Semitic or there's those smears, he takes it very personally, and it's an emotional response. You don't seem to have been triggered that way. Is that right, or am I misreading this?
Well, I mean, the reason that I'm in this in the first place is because of my emotional investment in justice and liberation. That's always been the case. Everyone knows who knows anything about my history that I started off my career doing research on the north of Ireland, which was at that stage the most unpopular topic on the British left, in a way that Zionism is today. Most British left organizations won't even use the Z word. If you check out their websites, it's hardly ever there. So I think that I have a deep emotional commitment to justice and to Palestinian liberation, but I don't think it serves the cause for people to get angry and to it sort of blurs the arguments. I try and retain something of my sociological training and to act like a social scientist. That in the end, some of the things that I've been saying are either true or they're not true. And if people can show they're not true, then I will say, okay, you've demonstrated that that was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. But I'm not going to be uh, browbeaten into apologizing for hurting people's feelings, whether they're on the left or the right, whether they're Zionists or not. That's the tactic which the Zionists use. We shouldn't fall for this kind of identity politics stuff of well, people have got access to the truth just because of who they are, because they're Jews or because they're Muslims or whatever it is. No, I mean the world can be apprehended by human beings. Of course, we all have our biases, but science is a way through that, and science is a means of protecting people against injustice by demonstrating injustice. And you can't just demonstrate it by howling with rage. That might help in other ways, but not to demonstrate injustice.
Do you think that's why you're targeted more? And I'm also thinking about Dr. Rame on this. Both you and Dr. Rame are given a lot of demonization by the media. I mean, constantly. I mean, a lot of people couldn't handle it, but you both seem to just get on with it.
Well, look, what we're faced with this judgment and with the tribunal judgment before it is that the British courts are, in the end, more left wing than the revolutionary left on this topic. And that's a pretty surprising judgment, right? So, I mean, here we are, and what is it we're supposed to do? I mean, we've discovered stuff about the world. We have to talk about it. But part of the reason is that I start to talk about the left, what's wrong with the left, what's wrong with parts of the left. But another part of the reason is that the process of research takes us further and further away from established what some of the left regard as Marxist theory. I don't accept that that's their characterization of it. And so, of course, when we start to talk about, as especially Dr. Rahme has done and others, about Jewish supremacy, people get very, very nervous. They start to say, well, you shouldn't even use the word Jew because, that's tantamount to being anti-Semitic. And you say, well, can we not use the word Protestant or Catholic or Muslim? Is that forbidden? Can we not talk about, as I have done in my research, Protestant supremacy? Protestant supremacists in this country, for example, an organization called the Orange Order, nobody cares. Nobody calls me anti-Protestant for talking about the Protestant supremacism of the Orange Order and indeed of Ulster Unionism and Ulster loyalism, which I've done for a long time. I'm by origin a white Scottish Protestant. Nobody says I'm a self-hating Protestant or any of those kinds of things. But when it comes to the Jews, you can't say they're Jewish supremacists for some reason. Now, of course, obviously, Zionism is a form of Jewish supremacy, as we've established in the judgment. If you have a group of people, Group A, as it says in the appeal judgment, who are introduced into a land where there's another group of people, Group B, and they displace those people, or most of them, well, that is called racism. And the courts have endorsed that. And racism, of course, is a form of supremacy, of racial supremacy. Zionist Jewish supremacy, just the same as there was in South Africa, white supremacy, or indeed in Algeria, the racial supremacy of the French there, French Catholics, let's be clear, against the Muslims. So there's no intrinsic reason why we shouldn't talk about that. But when we start to talk about it, and the horror that you get from some aspects, especially or perhaps especially on the left, is an indication, isn't it? It's another opportunity for learning. Why is it that people get so upset about that? What is the kind of exception which means that you're not allowed to talk about Jewish supremacy when you can talk about other forms of supremacy? And that it starts to you start to understand what it is, the strength of the ideology which is provoking these attacks on you, and then you can that raises new questions for new research. And that's the way in which I think research feeds into this. It finds out new things or thinks about things in new ways. And the response that you get, if you think it's curious, you've got to try and understand sociologically why that's happening. And I guess that's my thing, right?
I mean, what I would say, would you agree with this, is that the word Zionist is no longer taboo. I can remember, say, 5 years ago, if you said the word Zionist, you'd be seen as saying something almost anti-Semitic by saying the word Zionist. But you've kind of
Sure.
got that as a legitimate term now. So everyone should be grateful to you for that.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's not just me. That's been many of us. But there's been an evolution of the way in which we discuss this. I mean, if you look at some of the left writings on this, even of some of the slightly better organizations like Counterfire, they tend to eschew the word Zionist. They tend to not to use it in case it takes you down tricky paths. And even if you recall, when the Chakrabarti report came out into the Oxford Labour Club investigation under Corbyn, she said that Zio was potentially or was an anti-Semitic term. It's just a shortening of the word Zionist, as everybody knows. I mean, in fact, as we discover, this is what you do when you do research. You find things out. That the revisionist Zionist newspaper in the US in the 1950s, but what was it called? It was called Zio News. So this ridiculous kind of inoculated Zionism. We've kind of inoculated Zio even. And we're now beginning to inoculate Jewish supremacy as terms for analysis. And that's all part of the process as we try to understand what Zionism is and how to defeat it, because it has to be defeated. And again, this is another thing that I've been keen and clear to say. Look, it's not just that we oppose the state of Israel. We want the state of Israel to be dismantled. There must be no state of Israel. It has no right to exist, and it must not exist. And saying that clearly, of course, is quite shocking to some people. Of course, people in the kind of Corbyn camp or close to Jeremy, that's never something that they would say. And that was an indication at that stage of the weakness of their politics. Now, so many of us in the Labour Party at the time, I joined the Labour Party, as you probably know, you could see that there were some weaknesses, but it was only when we had those moments of clarity, when we realised that actually things were way worse than we had anticipated, which led to things like Corbyn saying, refusing to say that he was an anti-Zionist, because of course he's not, and all of those kinds of processes. And then people say, they see it, the scales fall from their eyes. They say, goodness me, we thought that Jeremy was a stalwart fighter for Palestinian rights, and it turns out he's not even an anti-Zionist. What do we make of that? And of course, that's another opportunity for learning and for clarity and working out what strategy should be and how you should go about dismantling Zionism, which must be dismantled. Let me emphasize, not just in the Levant, not just the colony in Palestine, currently occupying parts of Lebanon and Syria, but also in this country. Every single Zionist organization needs to be dismantled. They are racist organizations, every single one of them. Until we dismantle all of that, there will still be the potential for the racism of Zionism to raise its head and to continue with its maximalist, genocidal, freakish behavior.